Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe of Unicorns. I'm your host, Kendra Beavis, and today I am sitting with Jessica Soares. She is a empowerment and self-sovereignty coach and now an official unicorn.
Ah,
Welcome.
thank you, Kendra. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. So I did a little bit of stalking on all social media. I'm fascinated with your life and really everything that you're sharing and doing. So why don't you share a little bit about where you are currently and how you got there?
Alrighty. Well, right now I'm currently in Cabo Verde, which is where my mom is from. And it is my passport country, right? It's where I hold one of my passports from. But up until last year, I had never lived here full time. I grew up in Portugal. I was born in Portugal, grew up mostly in Ethiopia, a little bit in Portugal, and I'm half Mozambique and half Cape Verdean. I am what they call a TCK, a third culture kid. And this year I found myself stuck, quote unquote, living here in my passport country, Cabo Verde, for the first time. And this is after 8 years in New York City. So suffice to say, the adjustment has been a trip for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
what brought you there? Why did you go back?
I originally came back because I was leaving New York. I was in this transitory phase in my life. And I was living in New York and I wanted to go travel the world for an indefinite amount of time, at least a year. I love solo travel. It's something that, I did fairly often.
Oh,
This year has not been very conducive for that. Um, and I just came here to really like drop off my bags, drop off my stuff, and then go on my adventure. And then before I knew it, the world just like completely shut down. And in a way, it is, I think sometimes it can be cliched when we're like, it was such a blessing, but it really has been such a blessing and a gift to
mhm.
be here during this time, to get to know my homeland more. And it was also during this time that I officially launched my coaching practice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, had that been the plan beforehand to launch the coaching practice
Oh my
while
goodness. No, absolutely not. I am an actor. I'm an actor and a filmmaker by training. And I've worked, and I'm a tarot reader. So I've been reading tarot since I was like 11. And I've always kind of worked in the wellness and personal development space. I worked at a meditation studio for a long time, and I'm such a voracious like reader and learner. So the kind of person that like takes all the courses, reads all the books, and I am so invested in and passionate about my own growth and
Mhm.
doing the things, doing what I need to do so that I can show up as my best self for the greater good, for the collective, right? That's very important to me. And I had been, I had it like once, twice, three times, like multiple people be like, oh my God, are you a coach? Or are you, you haven't thought about becoming a coach? It was one of those things from the universe. And I had actually signed up for a certification program. My undergraduate, I did psychoanalysis, right? That was
Mhm.
the other part of my concentration. So I've always been interested in psychology and how people think and move through the world. And I had this certification program on deck that I was more like, okay, I'm just going to do this for myself, And then I finished the certification and COVID happened. And I was like, you know what? This is the time, right? Like, I'm so
Yeah.
passionate about helping people. And I'm really, really good at reminding people of their power and their confidence and waking people up to wanting to live a life on their terms. So why the fuck not? Ooh,
Yeah.
may I swear on this
Yes, go for it. Go
podcast?
for it.
Okay. Always happens. I have people ask that on my podcast all the time. So I was like, yeah, why the fuck not? And so I launched my practice and the response has been great. And like I said, I've always naturally gravitated towards like the healer, helper
Yeah.
role, advice giver role in my life. That's that's where I'm at now.
That's so what were you doing in New York? You said you're an actor.
Yeah.
Is that
So
what
I
you
was
were?
doing the actor hustle and grind. I had just finished doing a an original show like a couple of months before I left New York. I have my own, I wrote and produced and started my own short film a few years ago,
Okay.
right out of conservatory training.
Mm-hmm.
But like for money, I was mostly just babysitting, working in events, you know, the New York like
Yeah.
gig lifestyle. I've never worked like a traditional office job. They are not for me. They're like
Yeah.
the death of me.
Yes, for sure.
And yeah, creating and just really like enjoying New York City life, you know?
So, like we were chatting earlier before we started, this season is all about a focus on the action takers, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely certainly you. Do you think being a creative helps you jump into taking that action?
You know what? Yes and no. Um, and I will say this specifically in reference to actors, right? I
Hmm.
think with other creatives, sometimes it can be a little different, but actors are lazy. Actors are lazy creatives.
Okay.
Like, I feel like a lot of actors and people I know in this space really do get caught up in like the dreams and the visioning and the
Mm,
passion. And we have so much love and passion for our craft. But because so much of that career is out of your hands, you
yeah.
know, it's out of your control, people take that on and they become disempowered and they don't actually take any action,
Mm,
right? And as opposed to like musicians or dancers who need to, they have to, you know,
right.
practice and train every day. With actors, you are your instrument, your body is your instrument. So if you don't have that built-in motivation and self-accountability to like work on your craft, because it
Right.
looks very different, it's not as easy as picking up an instrument and practicing. There's a
Right.
whole other world to do it. It can be so easy to get stuck in that zone of not taking action.
Hmm.
But I will say that creative like spirit and desire to explore humanity and do more and be more and try things a different way, absolutely, that has absolutely helped me on my journey to being an action taker.
Do you think that that was something that led to your love of travel, and that like where did that urge come from?
The travel, I think
Mhm.
definitely from just being a TCK, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't have a solid sense of home. I really hate the question, where are you from? It sends me on an identity crisis. And I've been traveling since I was 2 months old. You know, I really do
Yeah.
believe in a world without borders and that we're all guests here on planet Earth.
Mhm.
And there's so much to offer. There's so much beauty. And for me, it's absolutely ridiculous that we erect these invisible, arbitrary walls between us when we're
Yeah.
all just like really people. And who are we to divide up the world like that, right? Like
Right.
it's all of ours to explore. So I think that thirst for different and unique and knowing people,
Mhm.
that which comes so much from my own identity of like, what is my identity?
Right.
That's what fueled so much of the travel, that wanderlust bug. I have it tattooed on my shoulder,
Do you?
wanderlust and a
Yeah.
compass.
um I have this thing in my head where I have this anxiety about how much there is to see and how much time we have. And there's a word for it actually. I forget what it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um do you get that too? I mean, especially in COVID now, like I had at least 4 trips planned. And now we're like behind the 8 ball with
Mm-hmm.
trying to get these things going. But yeah, and I don't know where that stems from either, because my parents weren't big travelers, but I think the little bit of travel I was able to do really gave me a bug for, because I also have an interest in psychology, and I love meeting new
Mm,
people and talking
mm.
about what their drivers are and how how their personality developed, and really diving deep. So I think traveling lends itself to that. You meet all sorts of new people, and
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
it sounds like a similar type of interest in with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that travel, and more specifically like solo travel, is a very potent and like sacred medicine. Like really.
Yeah.
Um I've spent this past month by myself on one of the other islands, just like a more remote island. And it has been life-changing. Just like that
Yeah.
time to just be with myself, be in a new environment, and open up my mind. It's so, and I do feel that. I feel like there's so much to see and so much to do. And I actually had an opposite reaction because of the pandemic. And I wrote about it in my blog. It was one of the first posts, that because the whole world came to a pause, I don't feel like
Oh,
anything is behind. I just
right,
feel like this
right.
whole time is just going to be like X'd out because we're all in it
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
I could see that. Yeah. And it was interesting to have everybody on a level playing field. We
yeah,
were all home. We were all
all.
reevaluating.
Yep.
Whether you were a CEO of a major company or, you were a solopreneur or just, a totally other label. Yeah, it was interesting for all of us to be in the same place at the same time.
Absolutely.
So all right, let's go back to the idea that you're an action taker. You don't let things kind of stop you. I mean, when was the first time you ever noticed that about yourself?
I've been like this my whole life. I'm going to be honest. Like I fucking came out of the womb
You're just
ready
ready
to
to
go,
go. Yep.
ready to go. And so much of it comes from just this deep, deep desire and like passion for life, like
Mhm.
life itself. I had an Akashic Records reading a couple months ago, and the reader was like, I had asked about something about romance, and she was like, honestly, I just feel like your greatest romance in this lifetime is just life itself. Like yours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the most accurate statement. Like, I just love living and like really being alive, doing more than just surviving. So that's
Mhm.
travel, adventure, meeting new people, indulging in all the things, right? Like, I'm a very indulgent person. I just want to absorb all of this life in this lifetime before I die. And
Yeah.
I think for me, like, that's the big driver, is desire, like the
Mhm.
desire for more, the desire to know myself more, to connect with more people, that just like thirst, yearning, craving to be filled up with life. And I know in those moments where I let myself stop or like not take action because of a fear or an imposed should, a perceived limitation, those are the time where I felt it's just so like I wasn't alive,
Yeah.
disconnected from myself. And that safety, that security is never worth it for me. I would
Yeah.
rather be out there taking the risks, embarrassing myself, falling flat on my face, but knowing that I'm living
Right. Is
rather
that
than.
where you see people not take action? Is it usually fear-based?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a philosophy that almost everything we do is based in either fear or faith, fear or
Mhm.
love. And we just live in a society that has been built upon and designed to keep us all in fear. And everything comes out of like scarcity.
Mhm.
And we're also afraid of not being loved, being left behind, that it keeps us from really touching that human part of us, that part of us inside that does want more, that's so raw and real. And in my work, it always comes down to some kind of an imposed narrative, a fear, a fear of success, which is, we had mentioned, and why I designed that whole course, the fear of
Yes.
greatness. Because I think we talk a lot about the fear of failure,
Mhm.
and not enough about the other coin, which is the fear of greatness. And I think part of that is just because, like, when people hear it, they're like, I'm so afraid of how amazing I am.
Yeah.
Some people are just going to hear that. They're going to be like, what a fucking asshole.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's I love that idea because you're right. And there's I feel like there's this imaginary wall up where you can love yourself to a point. Like beyond
Mm-hmm.
that point, then you're all those things that you've heard
Mm-hmm.
growing up. Your ego is too big or
Yeah.
you're braggadocious.
Yeah.
So what is your thought about that? Like self-love and showing that and showing off everything you've accomplished. I think if you're coming from a place of inspiration and just being excited about all of these things, it's not ego based.
Yeah. I think, separating the ego from like the true self is so hard, and it's a lifelong dance. And I don't think that the ego is always bad.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not operate out of ego, sure, but let's also understand that our ego is trying to protect us.
Right.
And that's its only job. I think that what has happened as personal development and wellness has exploded, thank goodness, I actually love the explosion, is that, as it does with anything exploding, you get different versions of depth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are just intaking it at that first surface level, that's when you start getting those messages of self-love that are very like superficial and reach
Right.
a limit. Because for me, self-love, right? Like that deep self-love, you can't get there without wading into the darkest parts of you.
100%.
The darkest parts of you. You have to love the parts of you that fuck up the most, the part of you that hurts people, that breaks people's hearts, the part of you that thinks terrible thoughts. That's the version of you need to love. And if you're not willing to see yourself as that and embrace all of that, you're always just going to be reaching a shallow level of self-love.
Mm-hmm. You see it on social media too. You see these people that have just like had this awakening moment, and then all of a sudden all of their posts are about, look at me at the gym, look at me, meditating or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you can see the difference, when somebody truly has that, that internal love for themselves versus someone who's trying to convince the rest of the world that they are, on board with this, like you said, this huge awakening or.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and there is a difference, I think, in which you had mentioned before, like when we see people like really embracing themselves versus it being an ego thing. And I think so much of that comes in like hierarchical thinking, right? Like I like to think of everything as a horizontal hierarchy rather than a vertical hierarchy. And
what does that mean?
This happens, like none of us are better than the other, right? Worth is innate. No one is better than the other. We just have different zones, different areas of exploration, different languages. So for me, if your drive, right? Like if my drive to change the world comes from a place of, I want to be the best at changing the world. I want to be better than you at changing the world. Rather than I want to give my best, right? Like, I don't care what you're doing. I just want to give all of me. I think that's where the difference comes, right? Like people that are like, oh, I'm more healed than you. I'm more enlightened than you. I'm like, just by that sheer statement, you're not. Like,
right. Yeah, I totally get that. My biggest goal every single day is just to make one person smile. And I feel like the ripple effect of that is, and that's what I feel like my goal in life is, and why I'm here, like to just raise the vibe by being my true self and sharing that with the world. And if that affects people and helps, do that, then I'm thrilled.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah.
Let's see. So I wanted to go back to, when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned something about the valley of, what was that?
Inaction.
Can we go into that? So you have somebody comes to you and they're like, I want to do this. And they talk about it for months, maybe sometimes even years, and you want to shake them. What is it? How do you guide them to taking that action and getting out of that valley?
I shake them. No, I'm kidding. But I will say that embodiment and physicalization is a big part of my work. So it's so hard because getting people right, like I make it very clear to everybody that as a coach, I'm not going to do the work for you. I can't.
Yeah, they have to do it themselves.
You have to do it yourself. Right? You have to be willing. I honestly don't want to do the work for you. Like, I don't want to be that responsible.
I didn't want work if you tried.
Exactly. You have to be ready to do the work and to do the work, and then to embody the work, to use it, to take action from that place. And that's where I call the valley of inaction, right? Like, because a lot of people do get stuck in the personal development cycle.
Yes.
They've been doing the work. They're aware of all of their triggers and fears and limiting beliefs. And then what? I'm like, okay, so you're just sitting with that suffering. Like, what are you doing with
What's
it?
your move? Yeah.
What next? And that is the value of inaction, right? Getting from that place of awareness and knowledge and desire to embodiment, to doing, to becoming, right? Because here's the thing. You can live in this part of the valley and say who you are, right? I can say that I am a progressive, anti-racist, intersectional feminist who is passionate about helping tell people stories and liberate people from the shackles they place on themselves, right? Like that's a quick description of how I would describe myself or my work. I can say all those things. I can post the right shit on my social media. I can read all the right books. I can have the right conversations. Actually, I would say conversation is in the action step.
Yeah.
But on the other side, how am I showing up? How am I showing up? Where is my money going, right? Like who are the people and the causes that I'm supporting? Tangible energy. Where is my money going? What are the conversations I'm having? And how am I showing up differently, right?
Right.
I used to really struggle with over giving, right? Like I'm very fast. I'm a manifesting generator. So it's generally easy for me to like find information, process the information, and give the information. My newsletter always has like free resources on it because I love curating this stuff.
Yeah.
And it would be the kind of thing where I'd be like in a conversation or in a chat with my friends or whatever, and someone would mention something. It's like, oh, like we should find out. And I would always be the one to find out.
You did it like before they could finish the sentence. Like,
yeah. It was done. It was like in the group, here's the link. This is what you need to know. And while I do love that, I realized that part of that was me like exercising my own need for control so that people don't leave me. If I don't give them all of this, you know, are they going to leave me?
Right.
And then I worked through that. I was aware of that. I sat with that awareness for a long time. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm acting out of control and I'm acting out of a desire to overgive so that I can control and not be abandoned, not be left behind. I knew all of that, right? And then I just stopped doing it. It didn't really change.
Yeah.
Right. Until I stopped doing that. But when I stopped doing those things, like when I got the impulse, like, oh, let me go on Google, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. Someone else can do it. Or, you know, I'd wait for someone to ask me directly rather than putting all these excess burdens on me. Or I would tell people when they come to me directly, like, oh, Jess, do you mind sending me that thing I'd be like, no, it's fine. Like you can just search these terms. It'll come up. And I actually had to start communicating, setting my boundaries and acting that way. And once I did, that need, that desire to like get love by controlling people just went away. And that's what I'm saying about once you start living it, embodying it, all of those problems that you're so aware of, they just start to fall away because you're no longer behaving that way.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we are what we behave, right? Like our behaviors make up who we actually are, not our words, not our thoughts.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. What matters, what has like tangible impact and a ripple effect is our interactions with ourselves and with other people.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about the fear of greatness and coming, you know, because I would imagine that's another one of those blocks that keeps you in that valley. What does that look like? Because, you know, people could think, I'm sure a lot of people think that's kind of a ridiculous statement, although it's been talked about so much now that I know a lot of people are more aware, but what does that look like for you?
Very often self-sabotage, very, very often procrastination is another big one, like acting out, shrinking oneself down, like apologizing for the space one takes up, like physically in the body and also with language. And you see this a lot with people who identify as women in the language of like emails and texts and stuff like that. I'm thinking, I guess, does that make any sense? Oh my gosh, does that make any sense? I'm so guilty of still using that. But there are all these things that are very much like, I want you to know that I'm not trying to impose upon you, that I am not trying to bring my bigness over you. Right. And so a lot of people that do have that fear of greatness, maybe they have a beautiful idea. They have a movie that they want to write. They've been working on the movie. They have the script. They even have the cast. They know like which locations they want to use. And you're like, okay, so why aren't you making the movie? There could be a part of them that really, really believes that this is a movie that's going to get them to the next step. They know how good it is. They know internally, they know how good it is.
Yeah.
And then they don't do it. That's when they procrastinate. Wait, no, I just need to talk to one more person.
Right.
Wait, no, I'm not going to submit it to that festival. That's how it shows up. How do you get over that? My method, like I said, you really have to make that desire for the different better than staying safe. Right. And it goes into analyzing and dismantling those limiting beliefs. For me, for example, one of the limiting beliefs that I had to work through when overcoming that fear is that, and this was very directly tied to my childhood, and that was that if I soar, if I shine when I am great, that means that other people can't. That means that I'm hurting other people.
Right.
Right. And this was from my own personal experience through school and things that I experienced. And so I had to rewrite the script. I had to really work on, and this included conversations with people, right? Like, you know, how do you feel, or how would you feel if this happened? And hearing viscerally that they would still love me and that wouldn't be harming them really, really helped. But it's a practice. Yeah. And it's a choice. That's the thing. There are all these things that are so intangible to talk about, to you know, explain, right. Because it's a choice. I made a choice to stop believing that story. I made a choice. And for this kind of work, I think you really have to be willing to be radically self-accountable. Yeah. And own that you're the only person that puts yourself in this situation. No one did at a certain point. So you're the only one that can get out of it. So where are you going to, what are you going to do?
Yeah. You know? I mean, you're also the only thing that you can control in your life, truly. So
absolutely.
If there's a major change that needs to happen, it needs to start with you.
Absolutely. And it needs to start with the small baby steps, right? Like, you know, whether that is sharing with your friends, like a big win, or sharing on social media, and then putting your phone away and running away if you need to, right? Like do what you need to take care of yourself, but do the thing. There's small little actions, right? Like I give my clients little scripts that they can use with people when setting boundaries. Right. Eventually that becomes yours. You own that language, you make it your own. But just having those starting points and those practices, I think, is how it eventually evolves.
I love coaching and the evolution of what coaches have become over the past how many years, because growing up, I was in a lot of therapy, and I always felt that, yes, you came to revelations, but there was never any action. And I love that the coaches tend to, great coaches, they work on where your mindset is, how you got there, how to get past it. Because like you were talking about the idea of the fear of greatness, there's a second part to that question. Okay, I have a fear of greatness. Well, why? Where did that start? And you had said, you know, you recognized yours in a certain way. You know, most people don't even know to ask that second question, part of the question. Okay, I'm afraid of being
absolutely
huge and in the spotlight. Why? Where did that come from? And then how do you then, I feel like once you figure that out, then you can get past it and work through it. But I just think people like you who coach people through this thing, it's just so important. Well, I have a final question. I want to ask, what is your advice for somebody who recognizes these themes in themselves and has so desperately wanted to move forward, whether it be with a career change or some major drastic change, or just getting out of that valley? What is your advice for them? First steps.
First steps. First step, I think, is you need to get really, really clear. You need to get really, really clear on, like I just said, where you're coming from. What are the stories that are holding you back that have been passed down through society, through your school, through your education, through your family. And you need to get very, very clear on where you want to go. You need a direction. You need a due north, right? Like that thing, that treasure chest, that X on the map needs to be the thing that excites you the most. Like it turns you on, and if without fulfilling that, you will die. That desire needs to be there, right? So if you're like, oh, I need to like have this career change because I hate my current job, but you don't know what you want yet, instead, take some time to figure that out while in your current job, because we live in the real world and you're going to need that money, right? And I'm a big like proponent of like sell everything, quit your job, travel the world, right?
Yeah.
But you need to know that that's what you want to do in order to take those great leaps. So, you know, get clarity on where you've been and clarity on where the fuck you're going, and make that due north so delicious for you, you know? So you can't imagine your life without getting there. And if you have that, if you already have the clarity, let's say you've already worked on facing your fears, uncovering your limiting beliefs, diving into your shadow, all of that good stuff, then now what you need to do is build a self-accountability system, right? And this is going to be different for different people. It depends on what works for you. Some of my clients like to set little reminders on their calendar, like throughout the day, of things they need to do. Literally, like have this conversation with mom, put it in the calendar, all of those things. For me, what works is a rewards-based system. If I'm trying to build like a new habit, I'll tack it on to something that I already really enjoy. Like I really enjoy taking bubble baths. So if I'm working through a new course that I'm like really struggling to get through, I'm going to do the course in the bath. Okay, I'm gonna, you know, buddy up with something that I do enjoy doing, something that's a little bit more difficult for me to do. And I'll always do it that way. I'm going to make that promise to myself. Okay, for the next month, I'm only going to do it this way. And I do it that way. And then once I do, I get a little celebration. And that can be different for different people. I'm a big believer in like making indulgent cheese boards for myself. And then I literally raise a glass in honor of myself. And I'm like, thank you for doing that. Remember how good it feels.
I love that.
And then I always record a little voice note of how good I feel after having done the thing.
Oh, that's so good too. I think there's such power in hearing your own voice talking about something you did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Those are a few of my little like cheat tools that I use.
Well, I can definitely, everyone can connect with you. I'm going to have your unicorn page and all of your links, but you know, finding you, where's your most used platform that people can connect with you?
Definitely on Instagram. I'm at the Jessica Soares all together on Instagram. And that's where I show up more often than not. And excuse me, signing up for my newsletter. I do mean to toot my own horn. It's really amazing.
Awesome. I'm going to sign up for it after we get off this call. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your genius and all of your joy. And I just absolutely love having people like you on this show, because I think people need to hear the method behind success. And you're certainly able to show this audience how to move forward and follow their calling.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. This was such an invigorating conversation.
I know. Now I'm on cloud 9.
Yes. And I'm going to go record a voice note to myself that's like, oh, that podcast felt so good. Reminder, schedule more podcasts with more amazing people.
Awesome. Yes. Do that, because the world needs to hear your words.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, Jessica, thank you. And thank you, tribe. I am so excited to release another episode on Sunday. Come and check us out every Sunday. We have new episodes, new content, new unicorns. So we'll talk soon.